developers. So a related topic to if statements in flow control, but more to if statements, but we'll end up using them as conditional, as a part of our conditional logic, is the ternary statement. So I opened up the ternary file here, and I have written out a friend object, our familiar friend here, Alex, that we've been working with, to set up a scenario for you so I can illustrate why we would use this. So let's just say I had a variable, another variable said is of age, and that I'm going to set up a default of is of age is false. So by default, we're just going to say that Alex is not of age, right? Is of age is false. If I wanted to try to flip that value or assign that value based on Alex's information, I would write an if statement that would say if my friend 1 age is greater than or equal to 21, here's my if statement, then is of age is equal to true. If for some reason I didn't want to set a default and I wanted to make sure that this was set to a value at the end of the day, we would then say is of age is false. All right. So let me get rid of this guy, and we'll open this up over here in our live server, and I will console.log is, oh, my machine is crawling a little bit, is of age. There we go. And I'm going to save that, bring that over here, and I'm going to open up my developer tools. So in the console, we will see that is of age got logged as true, right? The variable is picked up by the graph is true because the age is 21. And so naturally, again, we could test, love testing little things here. Let's make sure this thing works, and we're going to put them down at 20. And we're going to see that is of age is, if it's greater than or equal to 21. My logic was off. So yes, this is false. All right. But this is, this is a lot of lines of code. And this is also a red herring in the world of software development. Just because you have a lot of lines of code versus fewer lines of code doesn't mean that your code is better or worse than other people, right? Than another solution. If your solution takes up 3 or 4 lines of code and that you could do it in 1 line of code, it doesn't mean that it's worse. Sometimes it means that it could get better, sure. But oftentimes, if you're trying to measure developer productivity, developer effectiveness, how strong of a developer is a person, and you're trying to say how many lines of code that they can write in a specific function in, it isn't necessarily an indicator of it being better or worse. Okay, so don't pay mind to that until you get to the place where you can actually debate that intelligently. But here is an instance that I want to show you the ternary operator, because it's important that you're going to see it in the wild, and you need to know what you're looking at. So the situation that we're dealing with is that we have a variable and we want to assign an expression to it, true or false. And we want to assign this expression true or false to it. It could be any expression, but we got to pick an A and a B. In the case where the qualifying condition is true, we're going to assign true. In the case where the qualifying condition is false, then we're going to assign false. That just happens to be our scenario. I can have any variable, though. Let's just say I'm going to show you the other scenario after I do the straightforward Boolean. So to write this in a more concise manner, and I'm going to write this here below, I could also instead follow the ternary operator, which essentially, here's the format. I'm going to take an expression. I'm going to evaluate that expression as true or false. If that expression is true or false, then I'm going to use the value for true, right? Otherwise, I'm going to put the value for false, okay? So that is the format of the ternary expression. And so the ternary operator, it deals with 3 operands, 1, 2, 3, and it's going to yield the value, right? This is the value that we're going afterwards, right? If this expression is true, we're going to use this value. If this expression yields false, we're going to use this value. And so in this exact scenario, what I would write is of age is equal to, so now I have to grab my expression that I want to evaluate, that I want to do logic off of, right? So does this expression here yield true or false? If it is true, I want to say true. If it's false, I'm going to say false. Okay, I'm going to comment this out so that we can see in our environment that we come back now, and because Alex is 20, it comes back as false. If Alex is 23, we're going to see that it's going to come back as true. Okay, so that is an example of how to use the ternary operator. Now, this could get more involved. It doesn't have to yield true or false. Var my friend, right? So I can say, I want to do some more logic. I'm going to leave that in place and say, I'm going to say my friend, and I want to say if the friend, that first name, is equal to Alex, then I am going to assign to my friend the value of friend 1, okay? Otherwise, so here's my true value, right? I'm sorry, if it's the question. So here's my true value, and then the false expression, I'm going to assign it an empty object. All right. So what I've done there is I've said that if and I have to, let me console log my friend. My friend here is Alex, and let me actually output that a slightly different way so that I can see these with variable names, both my ternaries in effect. So I have here is age is true because this is still yielding true. And I've now done a ternary operator around whether or not I found that this first name is Alex. If it's Alex, then what I want to assign to my friend variable, right? And you can see it here in the graph. I want to assign it a pointer to this object called Alex. Otherwise, if it's not, we're going to go and just slightly change that name. We're going to see that my friend now is pointing to an empty object. It's just pointing to an empty object. That means nothing right now. I just wanted to show you the example on how to write this out here. And you would do this primarily because you want to do this in a nice, concise manner on one line. Okay? In one line. Now, we could combine or make this even more complicated. Right? We can combine this and put this in a more complicated manner. We can say, now, I'm going to create a generic variable called result. And let me get rid of this stuff because we don't need to see them. So I could come up with some logic that says, if my friend, and again, type of, what if I said if the type of friend is equal to object? Good. If it's equal to an object, what do I want to do? In the case that it is equal to an object, so this is where I'm going to then compound this. You could end up doing nested versions of this. In the true version, I want to do something, and in the false version, I want to do something. So I'm just going to default this first expression, that if I found that the type of friend 1, right, is an object, I'm going to do this particular value. I want to execute this in here, which I have not written yet. Otherwise, I'm going to use false. And so this is getting an error because I have not yet written anything in here. Okay, but let me take care of this so we can see that this is going to be, this is valid syntax, and so that's valid. So I want to actually make this a little bit more complicated. I want to say, before I evaluate and see if he's my friend, I want to first make sure that the friend 1 is an object. If friend 1 is an object, then inside here, what I want to do is I want to evaluate if the first name is Alex, then I want to assign him friend 1. Otherwise, I'm going to just say not a friend, right? And so this gets a little bit involved, right? Where you have this first part of the ternary operator, When that's true, it's going to yield basically another evaluation of a nested ternary operation. This is completely valid. Let's go and see what that looks like over here. And it comes back with my friend is this empty object. Why is my friend an empty object? Let's go see what that looks. In fact, let me go. If I can put this, I'm going to stretch this top and down. So the result is not a friend, right? So the result is not a friend. And why is the result not a friend? Oh, I forgot to put my result over here. That's why this failed. I'm going to put that there. And so my result is not a friend. And this is what actually showed up in the console log. When I showed up my console inside my object, the result is not a friend. Why is the result not a friend? Even though I found that the type is an object, right? When I did the check on Alex, his name is not Alex, right? His current name is Ale. What happened? Okay, since it's not this, it's going to be not a friend. And so then that worked out well, right? This worked out as expected. There's this nested operation in here. If you wanted to put parentheses around this, you'll see that that also works. The syntax is valid. I like putting parentheses if I'm going to do this nested stuff because it helps me just to identify the different parts of that logic. If I had defined friend as not an object, what if I just said friend, I overrode friend, and I said it was a string? We're going to see how this renders now as false because this first part is not true. So it skips the true value and it goes straight to the false value. The result is false. Okay. So one thing to note about this particular style of programming, my own personal pro tip, this is terrible. I don't like this nesting of ternary operations. If you really wanted to do some type of nesting logic, I would prefer you break it out into maybe even if statements, because once you do one nested, you're going to end up doing another nested one. And this ends up being really ugly. And it ends up being really sensitive. In programming terms, I would call this fragile. Now, why is it fragile? Because it's going to be easy to break. It's going to be prone to bugs. Again, it's fragile. It's going to be easy to break. That someone comes in here real, in a benign manner, not being extra careful, and does something that lets this result accept a value, have this result be assigned a value that was not intended. So doing the nesting, I don't recommend at all. I wanted to show it to you because you might see it from time to time, and I wanted you to see what it's actually doing. It's this expression, question mark. If this expression is true, we're going to use the true value. If it's false, we're going to use the value for false. And it could be nested. I wanted you to see that because you might see that in the future, and also give you that tip. Just because it's in one line doesn't mean it's better. Okay? It doesn't mean it's better at all. There are going to be circumstances when you can write code in less lines than more, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's better as well. Sometimes the rule of thumb for me on my teams when I'm in charge of a particular set of developers is what we want to focus on is obviously writing good code and efficient code, but we also want to facilitate our developers to be able to debug it and troubleshoot it. You want to be able to write code. I want developer Susan to write code in a manner in which when Alice goes and gets it and looks at it, it's not a headache for her to maintain it. Okay? And sometimes that means more code, not less code. And so that's the ternary operator that you can use inside of your if statements, that you can, inside of the if statement blocks, inside of the while loops, you can use it anywhere, right? You can use the conditional logic based off of a property, based off of anything that yields a string, this thing that yields a Boolean, that's what you want to use in the ternary operator. Put that in your utility belt for software development.